Have you ever seen a picture that looks like this? Or maybe this? The year is 2006. The Microsoft Windows Vista operating system introduces its new design language, Windows Aero. Distinct features of Windows Aero are bright greens and blues, especially light blue tones, and a glass-like look on the borders of open windows. Even in its early days, this design was very popular with users. The internet was still relatively new back then, and technology doesn't just overwhelm people with its options and possibilities, it also scares them. It's a lot to suddenly have a magical box at home that can do things nothing else can. In moments like this, Microsoft's Aero aesthetic almost feels like it's trying to calm people down, using happy, colorful imagery to paint a bright future. One that works together with technology rather than against it. This style, with its glassy look, soft gradients and bright optimistic landscapes, is what we now refer to as Frutiger Aero. In images like these, you often see tall, modern buildings alongside green grass and bright blue skies. But instead of contrasting each other, these elements exist in harmony. Maybe Frutiger Aero doesn't want you to think that being in touch with technology means losing touch with nature. These early days of the internet and modern computer technology help make people more comfortable with this kind of modernity, laying the foundation for society to accept new inventions more and more easily. But even though this design language was more or less popularized by Microsoft, images like these have roots elsewhere. Take this picture as an example. It originates from azadal.com, a Korean stock image website. For the life of me, I cannot find the original creator. All I could trace it back to was a Chinese website that appears to belong to a mechanical company, but I'm fairly certain they simply licensed the image. So if you have any idea who the original creator might be, please let me know in the comments. Frutiger Aero as a design movement roughly spans from the early 2000s to around 2010, with Windows Vista and Windows 7 being some of its most recognizable examples. But where else can you find this aesthetic? It's honestly been more under your nose than you might realize. The PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and Nintendo Wii all used Frutiger Aero elements in their own way. Even the Wii U in 2012 still carries traces of the aesthetic. Even though most people probably don't realize that these video game consoles fall under the Frutiger Aero umbrella, they are likely the versions people remember most vividly today. Of course, there's a noticeable difference between the implementation of this aesthetic in Windows Vista and something like the PlayStation 3. Windows Aero feels more corporate and system-oriented, while consoles used style in softer, more playful ways. Out of all these gaming consoles, the one that embraced this aesthetic most strongly was probably the Wii U and Nintendo in general. Not just in terms of the UI design, but in the overall atmosphere of their games and environments. In fact, when it comes to gaming as a whole, you could argue that Woohoo Island from Wii Fit and Wii Sports Resort might be one of the most Frutiger Aero environments in video game history. And that's without even counting modern recreations like certain VR chat worlds that intentionally try to replicate this aesthetic. As you can see, Woohoo Island, first appearing in 2009's Wii Sports Resort, looks like a classic Frutiger Aero image. The sky and water are bright, almost artificial blue, and the grass is as green as it could possibly be. Everything feels clean, optimistic, and slightly unreal. After a few years of successful Frutiger Aero dominance, the design began to disappear around 2012 to 2013. And in a downfall that can only be compared to horrible events like a League of Legends ranked game, a Marvel Rivals solo ranked queue, the Fire Giant from Elden Ring, the Shrine of Amana from Dark Souls 2, or Marvel After Endgame, Frutiger Aero was replaced by flat design. Glossy gradients vanished, glass effects disappeared, and the bubbles didn't exist anymore. What replaced them was something simpler, flatter, more corporate. And yet, even after being dead for over a decade, Frutiger Aero is still very much alive on modern social media. If you go to YouTube right now and type in Frutiger Aero, you'll find countless music playlists dedicated to the aesthetic. You've probably heard songs that fall into the so-called Frutiger Aero music category without even realizing it. Tracks like this one. Or this one. Regularly show up on platforms like TikTok or Instagram Reels. They are usually paired with captions like, "Which bed are you sleeping in?" or "Your birth month, your backrooms level." So why do people still yearn for this feeling? You could argue it's nostalgia, and of course, nostalgia plays a role. But a lot of the people engaging with Frutiger Aero today seem too young to have strong memories of Windows Vista or even Windows 7. Sure, they might remember Nintendo, the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox 360, but even those aren't always directly associated with the full classic Frutiger Aero aesthetic. So what's the fascination? Maybe it's the calming effect this design language has. The bright skies, the clean cities, the soft lighting, combined with that airy, slightly electronic music, it creates a strange sense of comfort. It's very hard to describe. I'm not old enough to clearly remember Windows Vista, but I do remember Windows 7 and everything that came after. And honestly, I don't think my interest in Frutiger Aero comes from nostalgia. I don't really connect it to a specific memory. It feels like its own atmosphere, its own mood. A kind of calm optimism that feels incredibly unique and strangely rare today. Even while editing this video, I listened to Frutiger Aero music, which I had never done intentionally before, and it was good. It was as chill as you'd expect it to be. But why would I make a video about this design aesthetic right now, in 2026? Of course, this topic is interesting, at least to me. But what inspired me to talk about it right now was, surprisingly, the new iOS 26 update. Roughly a week ago, I accidentally let my iPhone install the update while I was sleeping, only to wake up the next morning in complete shock when I realized what had happened. The update confused me completely. Suddenly, a lot of buttons and app icons looked glassy and see-through, completely different from the simplistic design I was used to. At first, I didn't like it at all. I was heavily annoyed by the fact that I couldn't even go back to the old version after updating. I started questioning the decision to change the design so drastically all of a sudden. At some point, I remembered seeing this Frutiger Aero aesthetic pop up on my feed a couple of times in the past, and I realized there was an obvious similarity. Suddenly, 13 years after the death of Frutiger Aero, we are back here, back in 2003, and back to this glassy design. This could have been a decision made out of boredom, or some higher marketing reason I don't fully understand, but whatever made them return to this style, it raises the question, is Frutiger Aero's design philosophy coming back in the modern day?